All right, workshop recap number 21 from January 4th, the first one of the year, of the new year of 2026. It's actually a really well-attended workshop. We had over 20 people and pretty bulky group, pretty large group of people to get through 2 hours with. But it works. We're gonna make some adjustments where if you don't actually get on that week, or even if you do, you can post. I'm gonna let you post 1 minute of your stand up and I'll give you feedback on the Facebook group. You can also send it to me, but I'd rather do it like that, sort of, so everybody can benefit from the feedback. So during the first career half hour, where we sort of open it up to talk about building a career as a stand-up or a comedy writer, we talked about getting into stand-up, like the different levels of stand-up, how most people start locally as amateurs and sort of build towards semi-pros and get to where they know the local bookers, the local comic community, the local venues, and try to get on those stages and use those stages to improve, to build their act. We were lucky this time because we actually had a pro road comic who's doing the second level, which means traveling outside the city, getting gigs, trying to make a full-time living or at least part-time living on stand-up. Roderick McDaniel stopped in. I'd done a gig with him, Destiny Lelane's gig again at Stargazer the night before, which is always very weird to me. I haven't really done stand-up for 2.5 years since I stopped doing cruises. So kind of rusty, but it's kind of fun getting back at it. Roderick has been doing the local scene, like he's worked Houston a lot, he's worked a lot of different places around Texas. So he had a lot of insight into it. He kind of knew the rates that people were paying and places to play and the different scenes. After that, you move into full-time comics who are basically usually trying to move to LA or New York, base out of there, do A-level clubs, start getting into the media, doing appearances and building enough consistent audience they can do, they can start moving towards theater acts, which is the next level. A high-achieving pro is doing theaters, which means you can charge much higher for tickets. You get to keep more of the tickets because you are the draw. And so if you're a strong draw, you can make really good door deals. And finally, there are people, star comedians, who are known pretty widely by most everybody in the culture. And at that point, lots of things open to you, doing endorsements, doing appearances. You can get into the media pretty much anytime you want. So there's lots of upside to that. But everybody starts at the same level of starting to build a local career. Like I said, it was great having Roderick drop in. So after the career section, we jumped over to the skill development, the comic development, the show development part of the workshop. And this was the second week of us working hardcore, like intensely on script, within the idea of everybody building at least a starter 1 minute that is dense with punchlines, tags, and act outs. It's sometimes hard for early stand-ups to do more than just punchlines. They tend to do the punch and then run on to the next topic. And pro comics don't do that. They squeeze every ounce of juice out of the comedy orange. And that usually means you tell the first punchline, then you tag it with as many other punchlines as you can. You do act outs, and then you'll stay on the same topic, but do a veer, a little intellectual veer inside the bit, and that gets you back to new punchlines, new tags, and new act outs. So that's what we're practicing this month. I start out by running a bit of my own, so something that's probably half of it's full-time or fully built that I use when I do professional stand-up gigs. The second part of it is just stuff that I think is funny, but I haven't really worked through yet. But I'm going to perform it, and I'll put it also in the comments so you can read it in the Facebook group. And you can look at the script, and you can see that here's the topic, stalking. This is what this one's about. The first section is all Twitter jokes. Second section is best stalkers, worst stalkers. Third section is famous stalkings. And the fourth section is solutions to stalkings. And every one of those is just a collection of premises, punchlines, tags, act outs. So I try to use something from my own act, and then we sort of break that apart to get started. During the workshop performances part of this Sunday, we had 8 different people go up and do 1 minute. And it started with Joseph, who talked about how no one reads books anymore. And he mentioned the movie 127 Hours, where a guy cuts off his arm. I'm like, that would make a really funny act out for a guy thinking about, I should have read this book. I should have read a book. Maybe I should have read a book on cutting my arm off. Then Iman, short for Emmanuel, it's E-Man, I guess it's E-Man, did a bit about his Mexican family not following rules when he was in the hospital. Phil talked about playing Santa Claus, and Phil's very deadpan, which I think is going to need to be either turned into a really, really quirky deadpan or way more animated. So we'll see which way he wants to go. Sean wrote a little mini rant about he would be willing to have Jared come back from Subway if it would lower the prices. Again, I think that's a very quick way of saying what Sean was getting at. There's a lot of setup in there that need to be moved out so you get to the punchlines faster. Quay, again, got up and talked about interesting stuff. Show signs interesting stuff. I think Quay's challenge is always getting in the moment and actually acting out the characters that she creates. So we're going to work on that. Clementine was a new guy at the workshop and did a bit about how dogs experience time and wrapped that back into him having sex while his dog is experiencing time. So it was an interesting bit, but it requires some numerical calculation in the heads of the audience. So it's going to have to be slowed down so they can actually follow along. It's odd. Some people in the audiences are fast processors, some are mid, and some are slow processors. Some are non-processors. You got to lay out the entire joke for them, which is hard for comics. And I like minimal type comedy where you don't lay it all out, but it passes right by a lot of people because they're not used to participating in the bit. They're used to receiving the bit. So it's always something to think about. And finally, Tom talked about his Irish heritage. He's Irish and American. And he's going to add in some act outs. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, if you can work on a good Irish accent. It's an accent that Americans love to hear. And it would let him play those bits out as characters. And I think it would add a lot to it. So after that, we only got 8 people up out of 20 people at the workshop. But I try to get everybody to stay active. So in the last half hour, we broke into 5 writing groups. And everybody did that exercise in their little 4-person group. So you got to pitch your bit, and then everybody tried to add clarity, if there were things that were confusing in your setup, but then punchlines, tags, and act outs. And as you notice, I keep saying that PTAs, punchlines, tags, and act outs, because I'm trying to get it to burn into people's writer brains. Because one of the things you find, if you can get these mechanisms into your brain internalized, it will start to do them naturally. And when you start doing things like crowd work, and everybody's always worried that they won't come up with jokes, they can't come up with jokes in the moment. That's because you haven't made your brain into a comedy machine yet. And punchline, tags, and act outs, if you practice those enough, they'll always be right there for you. And it makes you look really, really funny fast. It's one of the fun things about doing crowd work is that you're like, oh my gosh, my brain just does this now, which is pretty cool. So finally, I finished up by reminding everybody to treat the Comedy Accelerator like a community hub. It's a learning hub, and it's a career hub. So post your stuff in the Facebook group, the private Facebook group. Ask questions. Do anything you want in there as long as it doesn't cause problems. Start networking with each other there. One of the main things, and especially in this kind of entertainment, which isn't super professionalized, is doing favors for other people will create connections, and those favors will come back to you. Not always, but a lot of times they do, and that's how you create good relationships in the stand-up community, is by doing favors. I got every TV job that I got in Hollywood, 3 full-time staff gigs in Hollywood through stand-ups, through relationships that I curated. And those always started with me doing favors for them and trying my best to see if I could actually help them. And at that point, it's kind of natural for them to want to help you back. So I'm going to follow this video with a short where I'm going to perform the stalking bit. You can kind of take it apart and learn what we're talking about. But the game is always to look at it and go, have your brain break it into punchlines, tags, and act outs. And if you don't know what that means, a punchline plays out the idea that you've set up in the premise. And then the tags do it again with some slight variation. So it's basically repeating and getting more gas out of the same punchline. And then an act out is where you physicalize a scene of that punchline you just told. You'll see it when I do my stalking bit, because I do this a lot. And eventually you may want to go back in and vary that. You don't want to be so rote and patterned that everybody recognizes the pattern, even as a non-professional audience. So you got to always mix things up. But I don't care who you are, how alternative you are, how artful you are in your stand-up, or how rejecting of the norms you are. You're still doing punchlines and tags and act outs. I promise, because that's what stand-up is. Okay, so see you again next week. We will keep working on the punchline month. The January's a month of punchlines, like just to get really super strong in this one thing on your script. And see you next week.